Welcome back to our discussion of 14 defining characteristics of fascism. Yesterday we discussed rampant sexism, and today we're going to look at controlled mass media. Sometimes the media is directly controlled by the government, but in other cases the media is indirectly controlled by government regulation or sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Censorship, especially in wartime, is very common. So do you guys think that this applies to the United States?
Most definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just a corporate-owned media that's in bed with the government.
And we have been for a long time. I know a lot of people think everything's about Trump now, but it's been heading this way for as long as I can remember. It's just been getting worse and worse, and now it's really bad.
Well, I think that's how Trump has managed to get a stranglehold on the media, is the fact that he latched onto a truth and then, put his narrative on it, that truth being that the media has been controlled for a while. And it's never been that unbiased, so he was able to come along and put his own biased media in place, and he's pushing out the old biased media and bringing in his new biased media. But it's been this way for a while.
Absolutely. In 1983 we had 50 corporations that controlled the media, and today there is 6. And those 6, which I usually term as 5 because CBS and Viacom share the same board. The other 4 are GE, News Corp, Disney, and Time Warner. And they control everything that we see in the U.S. or that we hear. Sorry.
No, you're right. And now, I think a lot of people are tending to turn away from big corporate media news outlets, which is a good thing. But these smaller outlets are now getting scooped up by big corporate interests. And interestingly enough, local news outlets are getting bought up by the Sinclair Corporation, the Sinclair Broadcast Group. And it's a very conservative organization that's very into pushing right-wing propaganda. People have for a long time felt, and do feel right now, mistakenly, unfortunately, that you can ignore like the national news and focus on what's going on in your community, and the local stations have a little bit more accountability, so they're going to report local news accurately. And that is true, but we're going to see less and less of this as Sinclair takes over these stations, and they're buying them up just left and right. So get ready for another big player.
Right. Just recently, Sinclair was able to buy into more local stations, and now they have a reach of 72% of American households. Up until January of this year, Congress had put a cap to where you could only have a reach of 39% of American households if you weren't on cable or like a satellite distributor. So the FCC under Trump's administration has gone in and changed, have gone in and changed those regulations to where it's only 7. It's where there is no regulations now. So they're going to be hitting 72%, and it is literally Trump TV.
Yeah, there was a video done maybe 6 or 8 months back where they showed the morning news on pretty much every station across the country, or a whole bunch of them, like just a little clip. And these people were reading the exact same lines off the exact same copy. Like it was, some of them would do little things and change the words and try to be slick and do their little patented, whatever the news people do. But for the most part, it was the same exact word, same exact story in the same exact way on every single morning show across the country, basically. And that's what they're doing. They're making sure you're getting not just the story they want, but the version of the story they want.
I think that social media has been a positive force in this in some aspects, just from teaching specifically about the media over the last 10 years. I've seen very small changes. But even if the changes aren't happening on CNN or Fox, they're actually being discussed, which is something that wasn't happening before. So the differences between, riot and rowdy crowd, like we would see, well, even in Charlottesville, they didn't use the term riot, even when there was violence. Riot only gets used when the protesters are people of color, ever. Even when there are riots after like football games or baseball games, they very rarely use that term. Or looting versus stealing. Probably the best example of that was the same day in 2005 during Hurricane Katrina, where the same news organization printed two separate articles, one showing a white family and one showing a black man. And with the black man, it states that he was looting, and the white family, it was that they were stealing, trying to survive Katrina. And it's just amazing. And I can tweet these pictures out at any time. I use them in my classroom. But I screenshot them all the time because I want to be able to use them. I was just screenshotting the Charlottesville one just a few weeks ago because I wanted to make sure, keep it up to date. So my students realize this isn't anything in the past, but it is something that gets called out by those on social media, especially some with, a lot of followers, and it gets talked about a lot more. And then, of course, you can look at the way black men have been portrayed as violent or criminal, or their mugshots. Even when they're the victim, they try to find a mugshot to use. But when it's a white mass killer or the guy from Charlottesville, a Nazi, or anything like that, it's always, he's a lone wolf, he was a good boy, things like that. The media, and it doesn't matter when I say, when we say the media, it's not just one entity, it's all of them do this. It's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of them do it.
But in reality, it's only 5 entities.
True. But that's what a lot of people don't realize. And when we talk about those 5 entities, or the local broadcast still being bought up by Sinclair, or this is going to be all the TV shows. This is all the movies. This is everything on Netflix, on Hulu. This is everything on your radio is owned by those entities.
Yeah, journalism is pretty much dead with the exception of a few outlets. I mean, these people aren't questioning anything. They're just going with the same story. And people say, oh, this one is against Clinton and this one was against Trump but they both gave the main candidates tons of airtime for free.
Absolutely.
And the others pushed out third-party candidates, or other parties. They kept them out of the dialogue, when you saw them give a little bit of FaceTime to Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, but I noticed most of the time it wasn't very flattering FaceTime.
No, it's done intentionally. I mean, now Jeffrey Katzenberg has just paid a crap load of money to the Young Turks. So there's another one that's been going away slowly, but it's going to be gone soon too. It's going to be just like the other ones. He gave them, $20 million? You think that doesn't come with some kind of requirements?
There's a fantastic movie called Project Censored. And Project Censored isn't just a movie, it's also an active project done to collect the most censored news or stories, let's put it that way, because it's not printed in the news very often each year, and this has been going on for over 10 years. But I always recommend anybody watch the movie Project Censored, and anybody who wants the link can send me a tweet. It's open out there, it's not pirated or anything like that. It's not hard to find, but it definitely goes through this. And it even shows, different situations where different journalists are fired because they refuse to say certain things. I know one in particular that's not in that movie because the movie was made before this. In 2015, in the summer of 2015, when of course we know the war, or at least the conflict between Israel and Gaza, has been ongoing for a long time, but occasionally it actually reaches the United States news streams. And I remember it was all over the news during this time period, and one journalist was on CNN because he was actually in Israel, and he was telling a story about, and you might remember this, it was when Israel, quote unquote, accidentally killed 3 little boys on a beach, and he had got it on video.
Yeah.
And he was writing about it, and he was never allowed on CNN again because he said something negative about Israel, and he was only talking about what he saw and had the proof of. And this has happened not just with CNN, not just with MSNBC or Fox. We've seen multiple journalists who ultimately, I always wonder why it takes them so long. Why do they keep going on if this is going to happen? RT very famously had somebody walk off the air because they got tired of saying what they were being told to say instead of what was actually true. Just recently, on August 22nd, an article was published, My Life at a Russian Propaganda Network, a fantastic article, or at least fascinating, I should say, of, what is his name? It's right in, I can't even think of his name. Oh, here it is, Andrew Feinberg, who had gotten hired on Sputnik in January of 2017 to cover the White House. And he goes through and he talks about how one of the first things they asked him is, what would you do if we asked you to write something that wasn't true? And when he said that he wouldn't write it, that he would quit, they still hired him. But then as his tenure went on, of 5 months, he finally, got fired because he refused to say exactly what they wanted him to say and ask the questions to the White House that they wanted him to ask. And it's just another example. Like, it's not just one source. It's all of them tend to follow. It might be different people making them do it. If we look at CNN, Jeff Zucker, look at everything that he owns. Look at how much money he makes. He claims to be against Trump, and CNN calls out Trump, but look at how much money they make when they talk about Trump. That's why they don't talk about anything else.
Yeah. Plus, they just, it's to the point of ridiculousness. I mean, the White House pretty much now has they have for a while, but now it's blatant. They have full control over these people. We're not going to let you record today. We're not going to even show up today. We're not going to talk to you about this or that. Where are the journalists flipping out and writing stories about this? Like, this is ridiculous. And just going around, I mean, it used to be, even when the media was more corrupt, but not as much as it is now, people would go against it and they still report the stories. I mean, Serena Shim did, and she was murdered for it. But it's just, it's ridiculous. Like, when are these people going to stand up? I understand you have a life and you have a family and you got to make your money and all that, but where's your integrity?
I would say there are some people that are standing up. It's just people don't get any coverage. I mean, we've got Sarah Kinzor in St. Louis who occasionally gets to go on the shows, but she's been openly, talking about some of these things, not all of them, and nobody's perfect. But you do have journalists who are, who refuse to work at one network because of that, but they don't get the airtime. And if we don't know it's there, then how are we going to find out about it?
Yeah, but I mean, even if one of them, the ones who stand up are great, and they're few and far between, though. But even the ones who don't last on one network, they get hired right at another one. Look at the little Nazi supporter Tucker Carlson. We talked about this before. He's been through all of them. Now he's at Fox. So many people, they move from network to network, and these networks are supposedly on two separate sides, but they're really not. They're just all.
None of them should be on a side at all. They should be on the people's side, right? All of them
their side should be the truth and reporting facts, but that's not necessarily the case in most cases anymore.
There are certain regulations that were taken down in the 80s where you don't have the fairness doctrine within news anymore. Reagan killed that. And that was a regulation that was to hold news organizations to print the truth. Another thing is you realize that CNN, MSNBC, Fox are registered as entertainment networks, not news networks, and that's another way they're able to avoid a lot of lawsuits. But that's what happens in a corporate world when it's just about money and not about facts.
Yeah, that should be something they're forced to disclose in a big way, like every 30 or 40 minutes. Along with their advertising, like, you are not watching actual news. We are an entertainment channel, stuff like that. But they don't do that ever. People really, truly believe that they're news. I mean, for God's sakes, I was arguing with someone last night that thought Alex Jones was real news. And the thing is, with social media, you'll say, yeah, that's the key right now, and it is. But at the same time, these big companies are buying those up too, and they're starting to spread propaganda all through social media with all kinds of different accounts, from journalist accounts to their corporate their corporate accounts that go with their media. And then they also have other people that are feeding this news that they're paying for as well. And that's actual fake news, not Donald Trump's fake news.
Turner warned us about this. Ted Turner, he's the guy who founded CNN, and then he wound up selling it off. And I guess what I understand is that he was kind of forced out. He was kind of pushed out. But I remember when he parted ways with CNN, when he sold it off, he wrote an editorial where he explained that these corporations were buying up all these media outlets and they were merging with each other, and that this was going to a very bad place. And now here we are. I mean, can any mainstream media outlet out there, I don't care who they are, I don't care if they're Fox, I don't care if they're CNN, I don't care if they're CBS, whatever, they all, you can go to fact-checking sites and just see case after case after case where stuff they're reporting is not true. And they do that. They can do that because there's just 5 companies that own it all. Where the hell are you going to go? There is no competition.
Nope.
And what I find funny is that all these supposedly, free enterprise Republicans have no problem with this fact that there's no competition in the media anymore because 5 corporations own it all. That's not free enterprise.
Absolutely. It's the opposite of capitalism. The basic original definition of capitalism, of course, it's an idea, but what American capitalism was founded on was Adam Smith capitalism, and that was where you had innumerable amount of competitors fighting for you to be their customer, and that you had that choice that you demanded and they supplied. If you didn't like it, you could go somewhere else. If I don't like, a news source, I have 4 others to choose from. That's it. That's not innumerable. That is what is called shared monopolies.
Well, in this country, it went that way with politics first. We used to have tons of parties. Now we have basically 2 that even matter. And the same thing with media and every other thing. There used to be competition. Now there's not. It's just 2 giant companies or a few giant companies that pay off politicians and own most politicians, and they own the media. So what do you think's going to happen? I mean, look, for God's sake, the media led us into war with Iraq in the Bush era. Without the media, that would not have happened. The media sensationalizes things to set people, like 9/11. That thing blew up. Everyone's got American flags. We talked about this 2 shows ago under patriotism, or 5 shows ago, whatever it was. It's these people just they fall for it. And they have to understand, like you said, Gail, earlier, you have to look at who owns it and what else they own and what their interests are, where they're going to gain a profit, what benefits them, because that's what they're going to be reporting on, guaranteed.
I think that pretty much wraps it up for number 6.
Yeah, I think so.
So now we're 6 for 6. All 6 of these tenets are valid in the United States today, and have been. Many of them have been for quite a while,
and at very alarming levels. Like, this isn't just like, oh, we've got a little bit of this one and a lot of that one. No, we've got a lot of all 6 so far.
Yeah, so far, everything we've went through so far, the nationalism, the disdain for recognition of human rights, identification of enemies, scapegoats as unifying cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, and now controlling of the mass media, all of them are like extremely valid today. None of them, yeah, you're right. Like, none of them, you're like, maybe, maybe not. No, there's no way to deny any of these. If you deny any of these, let me know, because you're full of shit. So anyway, let's end this now, and we'll see you guys tomorrow with Obsession with National Security. So thanks for listening. What?
I was just giggling.
Oh, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for listening.